Hello, everybody. I'm not really sure why my camera is so close to my face, but I'm going to roll with it. It has a certain ambiance to it. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to begin the riddle of the citizen. And I think I've already explained the name of the citizen is Puranjana. So let's warm up by going through the Sanskrit that we're going to cover today. Then I'll read you the English and I'll try to see if you can figure out the riddle. That's what, after all, Nārada asked Bharishat to do, try to figure it out. So here, just to warm up, he says, Asit Puranjano Nama Rajarajan Brhatshrava Tasya Vigyata Namasit Sakha Vigyata Cheshtita. I think actually we'll get lost if I do all the Sanskrit too much. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen. The name of the king is the Citizen. It's I don't know, way so close to my face. So once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen, who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. So that's the first part of the riddle. There's actually two questions to be answered in this part of the riddle. Is who's the citizen and who's the friend? Why doesn't the citizen know his friend's name? Why doesn't the citizen know his friend's deeds? Now, try to figure that one out. What does it mean that he doesn't know it? So here, Asit Puranjano Nama. Once upon a time, there was a king, Rajarajan Brhatshrava. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named Puranjana. And Tasya Avigyata Namasit. There was also, once upon a time also, there was a Sakha, a friend of this king. But what was his name? Avigyata. We don't know his name. Or you could say his name was the unknown. Nor do we know his deeds. Avigyata Cheshtita. Now the next part of the riddle. See if you can figure that out. Next statement. Sonveshamana sharanam babhrama prativim prabhu nanurupan yadavindat abhutsa vamanaiva. So once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He, the king, traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode. Pritivim Babhrama Prabhu. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly sharanam, a lordly abode. Sharanam. What kind of abode? If you know Sanskrit, there's a hint in a particular word that Nārada Muni used, Sharana. It sounds like the word that's in Sanskrit for the solution to this part of the riddle is. Anveshamana means searching for. He's searching for a Sharana somewhere on the earth. That's interesting. What's he doing? What do you think he's actually looking for? The story is that there's a king who has a friend who he doesn't know, who's wandering all over the earth looking for a place to live. Well, what is this stuff really talking about? He could not find anything that he thought was beautiful or attractive. So nanurupam. He didn't find anything suitable. There's interesting story in the Upanishads which solves this part of the riddle for you. But I can't tell you because I don't want to solve the riddle for you. I want to see if you can figure it out. Nanu rupam yadavindat. So since he didn't find any good place to live, he started to feel avinda, not happy. Even Eva, he started to sort of feel not happy. So in English, I'll put it like this. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode, but not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. So why does it say he only seemed dejected? Why doesn't it say he started to feel depressed? Or he was sad? It particularly says he started to look like he was sad or seemed depressed. So that's interesting. See if you can figure that. Make notes of those. These are all the questions that come up. These are all the parts of the riddle. You can solve each part of this riddle. Then the next thing Nārada says, Nasadhu menita sarva bhutale yavati pura kaman kama yamano sau tasya tasyopapattaye. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. And that completes the previous sentence, the previous concept. So once upon a time, there's this king, a very famous king. Why is he called very famous? That's also part of the riddle. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king, and his name was Puranjana, the citizen. He had a friend who he didn't know. He didn't know the friend's name. He didn't know what the friend does. So what does that mean? That's weird. He travels the earth looking for a lordly abode, looking for an appropriate capital, right? A place to live. But he couldn't find anything that suited him. So he started to feel dejected. Each one of the places that he considered occupying did... How's the camera? Is it still okay? Each one of the places that he considered occupying did afford him some pleasure, right? Kamayatan. He could enjoy life in each one of those cities, but none of them were sadhu. None of them were just perfect. I wonder what this whole riddle is about. We'll talk about that after. What do you think so far? What's really being talked about here? Is this really a story about a king looking for a capital, or is it a story about something else? Okay, now the next. Sa. Ekada. Himavato. Dakshineshvata. Sanushu. Dadrisha navabhir dvarbhi. Puram lakshita lakshanam. Then suddenly, ekada, all of a sudden, Himavato dakshineshu atasanushu. Then all of a sudden, on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, he found Dadrishi. He found Navabi Dwarbihi Puram. Puranjana found his Puri. He found his city. He found a city with Lakshita Lakshanam, with very obvious good qualities, with very visible good qualities. That had Navabhi Dwarbi, 9 gates. What city did he find? Why did he find it on the southern banks of the Himalayas, southern slopes of the Himalayas? And suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas whose virtues were obvious. What are the 9 gates? These are all parts of the riddle. Each one of these things is a detail which will click when you understand what the story is really about. Now, we're going to hear about this city. What are the lakshana of this city? What are the great qualities of this city? Prakaro pavanatala parikayar akshatoranai. And if you know Sanskrit, there's hints here and there with the particular words he chooses, like aksha. Parikayar akshatoranai sarva robya. Svarna robya yasai. I see, that's gold, silver, and iron. Svarna robya yasai shringahai. Sankulam sarvato grihai. It's hard. All right, so he said, suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas whose virtues were obvious. It had good walls. What walls? What good walls? What does that mean? It had good walls. It had groves, towers, and canals. Windows, which is called aksha, and doors adorned clusters of homes with domes of iron, silver, and gold. What does that really mean? So let's just make sure we get this story at face value first. At face value, there's a king who has a friend that he doesn't know, who is looking for a city to live in. But he's wandering all over the earth looking for the ideal city. And every city has something good about it, but none of them is quite perfect for him. Until all of a sudden, when he's in the southern slopes of the Himalaya mountains, he sees a city that looks wonderful. It has 9 gates. It has good walls. It has nice groves. It has strong towers. It has clean canals. It has homes that are clustered together that have roofs of either gold or iron or silver, that have windows and doors. All this stuff is going to be meaningful in a second or two. This part also is really an amazing part of the riddle. Nilas Partika Vaidurya Mukta Maraka Tarunai Klipta Harmyas Talim Deepdam Shriya Bhagavatimiva. The palace of the city. The palace glittered beautifully, bedecked with sapphires, crystals, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. I'm holding up my fingers to count how many jewels there are. That's going to be important. It seemed like a city of pleasure, Bhagavatim Iva. And it really is. Okay, so the palace. What's the palace of the city? Interesting. Why does it have these crystals on the floor? So this is a nice city, huh? It has nice walls, nice groves, strong towers, deep, clear canals. It has a palace. The palace is sparkling with all these different kinds of jewels. What else about it? Sabha chatvara rathya bir akrida yatanapanai chaitya dhvaja pataka bir yuktam vidruma vedibi. It had clubs. Every city should have clubs, places for people to hang out. Sabha. It had clubs at the intersection of roads. Why are the clubs at the intersection of roads? It's part of the riddle. It had clubs at the intersections of roads which were funded by a market. The roads were made with tax money, right? So the money comes from the market. It had clubs at the intersections of roads which were funded by a market and led to playgrounds. So what do you think the playgrounds are? The roads from the playgrounds leading to the clubs at the intersections of the roads. And what is the market that funds the roads? It also had a great open field. in which to rest, surrounding a sacred tree adorned with flags and ribbons. Wow. This is going to be exciting. What I love about this story is how detailed this analogy is. Every little bit is parallel to what Nārada is actually talking about. He's describing everything. Nothing is superfluous. Everything is exact detail. Now he's going to describe what it's like outside the city. Puryastu bahyo pavane divya druma latakule nadad vihangali kula kolahala jalashaye. All right. Outside the city. What's outside the city? There's a garden of heavenly trees and flowers surrounding a lake with singing birds and bees. The birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. That's really exactly what he just said. And then Hima nirjhara viprushmat kusuma karvayuna chalat pravala vitapa nalini tata sampadi. So this outside the city is a garden of heavenly trees and flowers surrounding a lake with singing birds and bees. Its shallows, the shallows of the lake, were rich with lotus flowers, and its shores were framed with trees, whose fresh leaves and branches danced in flower-laden breezes, sprinkling dew from cool mountain waterfalls. Each thing is a part of the riddle. And one more statement, and then we'll go back and unravel this riddle. Nanaranya mriga vratair anabadhe munivratai ahutam manyate panto yatra kokila kujita. The animals from the surrounding forests were as benevolent as sages. Cooing cuckoos seemed to invite visitors along the paths. All right. That's how much I've translated today, this week. So you ready? I'm going to read it through to you without interruption now. And then we're going to figure out what it actually means. I got to figure out my camera because it looks awful. But anyway. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen, who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode, but not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, or even I should probably express that as even though everything had something enjoyable about it, even though each city had something enjoyable, none of them on earth seemed quite good enough for him. Then suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, whose virtues were obvious. It had good walls, groves, towers, and canals. Windows and doors adorned clusters of homes, with domes of iron, silver, and gold. Its palace glittered beautifully, bedecked with sapphires, crystals, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. It seemed like a city of pleasure. It had clubs at the intersections of roads, which were funded by a market and led to playgrounds. It also had a great open field in which to rest, surrounding a sacred tree adorned with flags and ribbons. Outside that city was a garden of heavenly trees and flowers, surrounding a lake with singing birds and bees. Its shallows were rich with lotus flowers, and its shores were framed with trees, whose fresh leaves and branches danced in the flower-laden breezes, sprinkling dew from cool mountain waterfalls. The animals from the surrounding forests were as benevolent as sages. Cooing cuckoos seemed to invite visitors along the path. So let's see. Anybody? All right, so I will start to unravel this for you. So, if I just tell you one part of the riddle, the rest of the stuff will be very solvable. So why don't we start with this? Who's this king? Who is Puranjana? What does it mean to be a citizen? Are you aware of the Vedic concept of Prakriti and Purusha? Do you know? So Prakriti and Purusha means what? It means body and soul. Why is the Purusha? So what does the word Purusha really mean? Puri, Puranjana, Purusha. Puranjana, or the citizen, is a synonym for Purusha. Purusha is the owner of the resource, the operator of the resource, the citizen in the city. The user of the resources is the citizen in the city. So he's called the soul, and then the resources are Prakriti, the body. So who is this king named Puranjana, the citizen? The king is the soul. Why is he very famous? Because the soul is the focus of everything. The soul is the meaning of everything, the purpose of everything. It's you. It's the true identity. So once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the citizen. Oh, this story is about a soul. Why is he a king? Because he controls his kingdom, which is the body. Now, this king has a friend. Why doesn't he know his name? This citizen has a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. How do you have a friend if you don't know his name? You don't know not only do you not know his name, you don't even know what he's doing. That must mean that you don't know that you have a friend, but the friend knows you. So the king, the soul, has a friend whom he doesn't know. But the friend knows the soul. The soul has ignorance, but the friend doesn't. The soul has a limited concept of reality, but the friend has an unlimited concept of reality. The friend knows everything, but the soul knows limited things. So this soul, the king is the Atma, and the friend is the Paramatma. Vishnu, God, the Supreme, the Super Soul, whatever. This friend is going to be absent from the whole story, which is exactly how our story goes. Because we don't perceive the friend, but the friend is perceiving us. And then at the end of the story, the friend is going to do something. Okay, so far, the riddle has been solved a bit. Actually, now, knowing this, you can put everything else. It's kind of like when you do Rubik's Cube, when you get the base right, then the rest of the thing's going to fall into place. Once upon a time, there was a famous king named Citizen. That's the soul. He had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. That's God, or the Super Soul. Now, what is he doing when he's looking for a city? What does that mean that he's looking for a city? Purusha, the citizen. The Puru is the body. The city is the body that he inhabits or uses. Purusha is the user of the city. So what does it mean that he's looking for a city? It means he's trying to manifest a body. That's what the soul does. It tries to manifest its existence tangibly. But it does so through the help of Prakriti. Prakriti provides it the resources to manifest itself. Prakriti provides the Purusha the resources to manifest itself. So the king is looking for the right resources. The soul is looking for the right type of body. And what does it mean that it's traveling all over the earth? It's reincarnating. It's trying multiple forms to seek for the form that it actually wants, to find the form that it actually is. He starts to seem dejected, it says, because he doesn't find anything to be quite perfect. Every city has some flaw to it, and that makes him feel dejected. But it says it starts to seem dejected. Why does it say that he seems dejected? Because the soul doesn't get dejected. The soul is just the experiencer of dejection or happiness. The dejection and the happiness are something that the soul observes, but is not in the soul. So the soul is going through some depressing, disappointing experiences, looking for a body that would suit it. But the depressing experiences are like water on a duck. It doesn't actually drench the soul. It's just that the soul identifies with something that gets drenched by the sadness. So that's the meaning there. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen, who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He traveled the earth, seeking a lordly abode or an abode to rule. But not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. Then it said that each of the cities that he tried out had something enjoyable about them. But none of them were sadhu. None of them were just right. I guess kind of like the story. There's some fables like that, right? With the bed. This one's too soft. This one's not too small. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. So what that means is, when you're born as a bat, then it's really cool to experience the world through your sonic vision. But it's not quite perfect. When you're born as a spider, then it's really cool to make webs and trap things in it and then eat them. And it's exciting, but it's not quite perfect. When you're born as a pig, it's really exciting to smell things. When you're born as a rabbit, it's so fun to find vegetables. When you're born as a tree, it's so amazing to soak up the sun. But everything has something to it which is really enjoyable, but none of the cities that he found really satisfied him or gave him the resources that he really wanted. That's what Nārada is saying here. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. Then, suddenly, he found a city that was Laksha Lakshana. That was obviously better than the other ones. So what kind of city is that? That's a human city. It's obviously better. The hands are one of the things that make it obviously better. It's the amount of things that you can do when you have two free hands with fully developed fingers. And then the speech is the other thing. The ability to speak and cognize in sophisticated words is the other thing that makes this human form of life obviously superior to the other ones. So when the king saw this city far away, which is the human city, he thought, whoa, that's the one that I've been looking for. It says here, suddenly he found a 9-gated city. Nine-gated means that it was that it was definitely a mammalian type of life, because it had 9 holes. So if you count your holes, you're going to wind up with 9 of them. Actually, this might have to be updated, because I think if you're a woman, you'll get 10. But I think they just kind of amalgamate the 2 front doors into one. So they say, downstairs you have a front door and a back door. Those are 2 holes. And then you have 2 up here, that's 4. 2 right here, that's 6. 2 over here, that's 8. And then this one, that's 9. So those are the 9 gates. That 10th gate, the 10th one is small. But then again, so is the 9th one for a man. I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, it's widely just described everywhere. Even in the Gita, Krishna says it's a Navadwara Puri, a 9-gated city. So he's talking about the form of life. The important thing for you to realize here is some forms of life don't have a mouth separate from their hand, for example, or they don't have a mouth separated from the nose, or they may have their eyes and their ears together. They don't have the senses fully developed. So if a city has 9 gates, it means all the senses are fully developed. So it's an advanced form of life. And then not only is it an advanced form of life, but it's an advanced form of life which is clearly superior to the other advanced forms of life. Laksha Lakshana. So it's Navadwara Puri with Laksha Lakshana. So that's a human form of life. Then suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas. That's North India. There's something special about that place because you get access to information there from the Vedas that allow you to make very, very informed decisions. But also the fact that it's where it is, if you've ever gone to India, to North India, the climate is awful. It's a harsh climate. But if you go up to the top of the Himalayas, the climate is awful too. It's totally harsh as glaciers. But if you go just the right distance up the Himalayas, then you get resorts, like a resort type of climate. So this also means that he found this on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, means that he was in a perfect environment. So this is because human beings have societies. That's why it's described as being in a perfect environment. Just because they're social animals. All right. So just to let me read you the story again, and you do all the translation in your own mind. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named a citizen who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode, but not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. Then, suddenly, he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas whose virtues were obvious. So finally, after transmigrating through all the animal species, he arrives in a human species. Now, this body is described. This city is described. It had good walls, groves, towers, and canals. What are the walls, the groves, the towers, the canals? So if a city has good walls, it doesn't have pockmarks. You don't see the bricks underneath the walls. The stucco is all nice. The paint is nice. So this means the body has good skin. If your city has good walls, it means your body has good skin. Then he says it has good groves. Groves is hair. Hair is of 2 types, hair in the head and hair in the body. Hair in the body, most people think it's a nuisance, but it's only a nuisance if you get the wrong hair on your body. If you have the vellus hair on your body, it's not a nuisance at all. You need the vellus hair on your body to have sensation of touch. And then hair on the head you need for beauty. So the groves are the hair on the body, which is important. The skin is important for touch. The groves are important for touch. Then towers, strong towers. Those are the arms and the legs, the things which come out from the main part of the body. And the canals, which are clean and deep. That's all the plumbing and irrigation inside the body. So if a body doesn't have good canals, then the sewage gets backed up and it gets sick, and then it becomes an uninhabitable city. But this city that he found had very good canals. I mean, it had a good sewer system, and it had good blood circulation, not high blood pressure, not low blood pressure, no cholesterol. etc. Good circulation. Then it had these houses. And the houses had windows and doors. And the windows are called aksha. In Sanskrit, the word aksha means eye. So the windows are called eyes. It had windows and doors in clusters of homes. And some of the homes had iron. There were domed houses. And some of the houses had iron domes. And some had silver domes. And some had golden domes. So the iron, gold, and silver is an analogy for sattva, or tamas is for iron, rajas for silver, and sattva for gold, which is the three qualities, the three most basic fundamental qualities in Prakriti. And through these qualities color our experience of the Prakriti. So if you're experiencing through tamas, then you're going to feel detached, relaxed, inactive. You can sleep, you can rest, you can let go of things with tamas. When you look at experience through tamas, with rajas, it's just the opposite. You're going to feel inspired. You're going to feel active, ambitious. If you look at the world through tamas, the silver dome, these are the places through which we look at the world. These houses, the windows and door, the homes are the senses, and the windows and doors are the ability to look out and experience the world. Actually, the commentators say that it's not exactly the senses, but it's like the energy generator for the senses is the homes. And they can look out to the world through the doors and the windows, and some of them will look out to the world through tamas. Sometimes they can look through tamas, they can choose, or it happens cyclically or whatever on a schedule. Or sometimes they can look through rajas, sometimes they can look through sattva. If you look at the world through sattva, it's very clear. So here's this city that has nice skin, walls, it has nice hair, groves, it has good arms and legs, towers, it has good plumbing, canals. It has homes of all three types with windows and doors that are clean and openable. You can look out to the world in these three different ways. And then it has a palace. So what's the palace? The palace is where the king actually lives, right? So the palace is the place. It's not actually a physical place, but let's describe it as a place where the soul dwells in the body. The reason why I'm quoting all these things is because they're not physical locations. They're trans-physical. They're above space evolutionarily. So it's something which exists, but not in a spatial realm. So the palace is the chitta, which is the heart, not the heart organ, but the heart, the core of the being. That's where the soul's interface to the body is through this thing called chitta, which is a heart, not the beating heart, but a core, the core of the being. And that's described as the palace of the city, and this palace is glittering because the consciousness light is coming from the palace. And it has these 6 kind of jewels: sapphires, crystals, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Why? What are those? Those are the 6 chakras. There's 7 chakras, but the 7th chakra doesn't interact with the body. It's just for moksha. The 6 chakras that interact with the world are visible in the city. And each one is signified by a different type of a jewel or a color. So the soul occupies the chitta. It interfaces with the chitta, and then from the chitta distributes its energy to the chakras, the 6 chakras, which then distribute their energy to the homes that have those different roofs, which then let the light out through the doors and the windows. Exciting, interesting. So he found this city that had good walls, groves, towers, and canals, that had windows and doors and the homes of iron, silver, and gold. It had a palace that glittered beautifully and was bedecked with sapphires, crystals, diamonds, with 6 types of jewels. Bhagavativa, it seemed like a city of pleasure. That's the body. The body is Bhagavati. Björk, the singer Björk, talks about the body like this. It's just like a city. It's like there's pleasure in the body. You don't even have to look outside yourself for pleasure. You don't even need to eat cupcakes. There's already pleasure right in you. So it's called Bhagavati. Now, a little more information about the body and how it's engineered. It had clubs. What's a club? A club is a sabha, a place where people meet and enjoy and have fun. It had clubs at the intersections of roads, which were funded by a market and led to playgrounds. This is describing the nervous system. So the roads are the nerve pathways. The intersections are where the pathways meet. The roads go from playgrounds to clubs. So you can start at a playground, take a road to a club. And if you start at any playground, you can arrive at a common club. So what's that all about? The playground is the place where you experience life. It's the place where you experience pleasure. So the playground is the actual physical senses. This city had several different types of playgrounds. One for the sense of touch, one for the sense of smell, one for the sense of sight, one for the sense of taste, etc. One for the sense of hearing. And those are connected by roads to intersections that have clubs at them. What happens is we don't really enjoy the red wavelength. It's just a wavelength. We enjoy the red wavelength, nor do we just enjoy a particular scent of a flower. But when the red wavelength and the scent of the flower come together, and then the light of a shape comes at the same time, and you see a curvaceous woman in a red dress with nice perfume, then the combination of those 3 things comes to the sangha in the club at the intersection of the roads. That produces something that's truly enjoyable. The raw ingredients in your kitchen are not really that enjoyable, but when the raw ingredients get put together in the recipe, that's something you enjoy. Similarly, the raw sense data that's out there is not really that enjoyable, but it's the combinations of the things that come together along the nerve pathways, meet up, congregate in the club, and mix up in the club. That's what's enjoyable, the party in the club. And the whole nervous system is funded or maintained by the marketplace. So the marketplace is the brain, which is the king of the nervous system. All right, very cool so far. A little bit more about the city itself. Let's just review. Suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas whose virtues were obvious. It had good walls, groves, towers, and canals. I hope you remember what those 4 things are. Windows and doors adorned clusters of homes with domes of iron, silver, and gold. Iron, silver, and gold, Rajas, Tamas, Sattva. The windows and doors and the homes are they're called subchakras or something. There's some technical name for them. And they are the things that supply energy to the senses. Then you have the palace, which is the chitta, or the heart, and its chakra system with the 6 different kinds of jewels. Then you have the nervous system, which is connected from playgrounds to clubs by roads that join in intersections and are maintained by a market. So that's the brain maintaining the nerve pathways, the congregation of the nerve pathways in these little clubs, and the playgrounds of the senses. Then finally, inside the city, there's a great open field in which to rest, surrounding a sacred tree adorned with flags and ribbons. What do you think that is? What do you think this sacred tree, this city has a sacred tree, and the sacred tree is surrounded by a big open field and decorated. What do you think that sacred tree is? That's the ego. That's a sense of identity. And the decorations on it are the accomplishments. So what's the field around it? It's the resting place. It's the place where you can sleep and dream. What is the reason why the field is anchored around this tree? Because when you sleep, you suspend your contact with the working senses. And you can, at some point, you suspend your contact with your intellect as well. So there's no more activity in the playgrounds. There's no more activity in the club. When you're dreaming, there's no more activity in the playgrounds, but there's still activity in the clubs. But when you're in deep sleep, there's no more activity in the playgrounds. There's no more activities in the club either. There's no more activities on the road. There's just this tree and an empty field around it. The reason why you can wake back up is because the tree exists. Because you have an anchor point that keeps you focused in the city. Which is your ego, or your sense of identity, or your sense that you are the citizen of that city. So sleep, when deep sleep, the only contact that we maintain is with the ego. Which is why when we emerge from deep sleep, although we had no specific experience, we know that we had no specific experience. That we know that we were conked out. We know that we were out of it. We don't know how much time passed. Nothing actually happened. But we know that we went through that. Because the ego is the only thing that remains in that field. So that field is for sleeping. And that field is also for dreaming, which means coming up with plans and ambitions and desires. Which is also based on the ego. Very cool, right? This is a great riddle, great analogy. So let me read you that so far. And then we still have to talk about what's outside the city. So far what we've heard is, once upon a time there was a very famous king named the Citizen, who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode, but not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. Then suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, whose virtues were obvious. It had good walls, groves, towers, and canals. Windows and doors adorned clusters of homes with domes of iron, silver, and gold. Its palace glittered beautifully. Bedecked with sapphires, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies, it seemed like a city of pleasure. It had clubs at the intersection of roads which were funded by a market and led to playgrounds. It also had a great open field in which to rest, surrounding a sacred tree adorned with flags and ribbons. Outside that city was a garden of heavenly trees and flowers, surrounding a lake with singing birds and bees. So outside the body is the world. The body, we actually don't commit to being a citizen of a body. We don't sign the paper, the contract on moving into a home, unless we know the neighborhood. Because location is everything. I might have a 4-bedroom house, in Fontana, California, next to the Hells Angels. Or I might have a 4-bedroom house in Beverly Hills. It's a big difference. So similarly just having a nice body is not wonderful if it's not in a nice environment. If you don't have a nice family, if you don't have a nice neighborhood, if you don't have a nice society around you. And you won't really commit yourself to that identity unless you're confident that your surrounding is good. So the surrounding of the city was also something that was on his mind. Outside the city, there's beautiful. There's a lot of things you can do outside the city, a lot of things you can experience. That's what the gates are for. The city has 9 gates that the citizen will exit through the gate to experience the outside world through that gate. So, for example, when you look at the world, you're exiting through the eyes gate, experiencing some things and bringing the experience back in. So, outside the city is really nice, and it's a flowering lake surrounded by singing birds and bees and flowers and trees. So it's sexy. It's romantic. It's enjoyable. It looks nice. It's attractive. And now the lake is described. Its shallows were rich with lotus flowers, and its shores were framed with trees, whose fresh leaves and branches danced in the flower-laden breezes, sprinkling dew from cool mountain waterfalls. So what's this? There's 5 sensations here that are being described. The wind or the breeze is for the sense of touch, because the wind changes the pressure and creates movement, and you feel it on your skin. The water, the dew that's on the leaves that comes from the waterfalls, the fresh, cold waterfalls, is for the sense of taste. So through this body, you can go out through the gates to experience different types of sense objects. One is the sense of touch, which Nārada is describing as the breeze. The other is the sense of taste, which he's experiencing as the dew from the waterfalls. The other is the sense, there's 2 things represented by the flowers. The flowers have the smell, and the flowers have the color to them. So the smell and sight. And then the birds singing is the song. The animals from their surrounding forest were as benevolent as sages, and cooing cuckoos seemed to invite visitors along the path. So the non-violent animals indicates the people in your environment were not competitive or antagonistic to you. So this is another principle of human life, is called dharma, where you want to have your morality. It's not some big different game than just trying to make money. It's the same game as trying to make money or trying to have sex. It's the same game as trying to have morals. It's just that you realize that if there's no morals, then I won't be able to have my money safe. And if I don't have my money safe, then I won't be able to have my sex well. So I need morals. My society needs morals, because I don't want violent animals surrounding my city. I want peaceful animals that cooperate with each other and are good to each other. So a human being best flourishes, best enjoys life in a society which has morals to it. Which means that the people are not violent to each other. The people cooperate with each other and help each other. And then there's these cuckoos that are making sexy sounds. They're making little inviting sounds and peaceful sounds. That are inviting. They invite the person along the path. They're saying, it's nice out here. Come out here. It's really nice. Come out. So the outside of the city is pulling the citizen to come out and experience in the world. When the citizen interacts with the world, it's like sewing a patch onto your jeans. The patch now is established. It's got its place. It's not going to get thrown away. Similarly, when you enjoy the world through your senses, then your body is established in the world, and it's not going to disappear. All right, that's my section of the Bhagavatam that I've got for you this week. Let me see if you have any interesting questions about that. While I give you a chance to type in your questions, or Samurai, you can type any good ones that came up before. I'll just read you the story one more time, even though it's like the 90th time I read it. I'll do it dramatically this time. Once upon a time, there was a very famous king named the Citizen, who had a friend whose name and deeds he did not know. He traveled the earth seeking a lordly abode, but not finding anything attractive, he started to seem dejected. Even though he could enjoy what he desired in each of them, none of the cities on earth seemed quite good enough for him. Then suddenly he found a 9-gated city on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, whose virtues were obvious. It had good walls, groves, towers, and canals. Windows and doors adorned clusters of homes with domes of iron, silver, and gold. Its palace glittered beautifully, bedecked with sapphires, crystals, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. It seemed like a city of pleasure. It had clubs at the intersection of roads, which were funded by a market and led to playgrounds. It also had a great open field in which to rest, surrounding a sacred tree adorned with flags and ribbons. Outside that city was a garden of heavenly trees and flowers surrounding a lake with singing birds and bees. Its shallows were rich with lotus flowers, and its shores were framed with trees whose fresh leaves and branches danced in flower-laden breezes, sprinkling dew from cool mountain waterfalls. The animals from the surrounding forests were as benevolent as sages. Cooing cuckoos seemed to invite visitors along the paths. That's the riddle of the Citizen solved. Thank you, Marie. Thank you. Melissa Meter asks, does the Ahankar and Chitta travel to the next birth? Yes. The Ahankar, Chitta, Buddhi, and Manas is part of the permanent body. And that is actually what is creating various temporary bodies. Actually, if Etal is here, this is another meaning for, another interpretation for it in chapter 15 of Gita, where Krishna says there's a temporary person, a permanent person, and a third person who's beyond the temporary and the permanent. So the temporary person is the physical person, the permanent person is the mental, emotional, intellectual person, and the person who's beyond the temporary and the physical, the temporary and the permanent, is the eternal person, the observer, consciousness itself. The identity, although it's a permanent identity, its prakriti is permanently changing. It's changing, but it's changing at a much slower rate. So it doesn't have a hard break, like you have a body and then it dies and then you create a new body. You don't have to do that with a mind or an identity. It just changes its shape. It's the same thing, but it changes its shape to fit inside or to interface with a new physical form. Any other questions? Mary says she never would have been able to guess the meanings, but I bet you you would, if you just knew the fact that the king is the soul. And the rest of it, you would figure out most of it. Some of the stuff is kind of hard to figure out. Please define the soul. The soul is the conscious observer. Any other questions for me, Samurai? Or maybe she has to wait for more than a minute because of slow mode. Samurai asks, when the universe is destroyed and the jivas become asleep, they keep memories from previous lives in previous universe versions? They do. They do. But memories are kept in if you understand the format for data storage, you'll understand the nature of memories better. The format for data storage is that there's a substance called chitta, which we described before as the palace, right? There's a substance called chitta which is imprintable. You can press things into it. And what a memory is a shape that's been pressed into the chitta. So then the memory, the clarity of the shape is not always exact, or it's not always fully defined. So the shapes gradually come out. It's like if you had a big ball of viscous slime and you push a shape into it. And then over time, that little imprint gradually fades out. So you do hold on to memories even when you're in that universal sleep. But the only thing that really remains of the memory is the basic outline. The basic outline of the memory, which was, I was interested in this sort of thing. Samantha asks, if you choose not to come into a new body, you can't really choose not to come into a new body. You're trying to make a body. You're trying to manifest your existence. If you choose not to manifest your existence, then you don't. But it's not just a choice, you have to be capable of it. If you still have wants and desires, then you won't be able to not manifest an existence because you'll be pushed to fulfill the wants and desires. And you wouldn't wander at all, because why would you wander? You wander when you look for something. You don't wander, you become inactive entirely. Bomb asks if the king finds his perfect form. We'll find out about that. Let's see what happens later. All right, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you very much for this cool hour that we spent here together. I'll see you next week for more. Now, what's going to come next? He's going to meet somebody amazing in the garden. So we're going to have a new riddle about this woman that he meets, who she is. They're going to get married. That's the next part of the riddle. I'm going to probably just end it here. Thank you.